$1.9 billion US dollars. It was sold out in like 3 minutes. How does that feel that you've created something like this?
I remember at 6 years old, I told him right away, I said, I'm gonna buy you a BMW one day. In 2016, when I finally saved up enough money, I got him a Model 3. And I finally kind of made that dream come true.
You announced anime.com. This morning I checked on GoDaddy. That domain cost like $14 million. You know?
14 million? Is that what it said?
I saw on GoDaddy. Yeah.
It's listed for 14 million?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. A great domain like anime.com comes great responsibility. And so we don't take that lightly. So you can hold me accountable for that. On the topic of like childhood and being a founder, I feel like there's actually a very strong correlation between founders that have a very difficult and challenging upbringing, or childhood trauma, you know, because they're just built different.
I'm sure you face a lot of like doubts, uncertainties. Going through what you face now, and you could tell Alex back then, what would you say to him?
I'm no means perfect, not anywhere close. And people didn't know me personally, so they only saw me as this character named Zagabond. And now they want to see this character fail. And so over the past few years, I think this is why it's important for me to tell my story, for people to know who I am, the good and the bad, but also learn from my mistakes and failures as well.
Morning, Z.
Morning.
I have so much to unpack here. Maybe I'll start this whole episode by talking about Alex before we get to Z. How would you say... I
updated my LinkedIn, by the way. It's
really?
Now Alex.
Okay.
Alex
so
Shu.
Officially Alex Shu.
Yeah. So it's good timing.
How would you say the people closest to you, how would they describe Alex?
That's a
I
really
started
good
with
question.
a hard one.
It's a good question because I feel like my personality, like I can be quite different at different times, you know. And the people closest to me, like my girlfriend, for example, right? She tells me that sometimes I'm just in work mode, right? Boom, founder mode. I'm like completely different person, and then I turn that off, and like all of a sudden I'm in boyfriend mood, right? Or mode, and that often means I'm a lot more like, you know, I love to joke around. I love to, you know, pull pranks. I love to, you know, dad jokes, whatever, hate it or love it, you know, stuff like that. But then like sometimes I get very serious when I'm at work, right? So some of my close friends who I also work with might see that side of me as well. So I think it really depends on who you ask. But most of my close friends would say that I'm fairly down to earth and, you know, I'm pretty laid back. But I am very ambitious. I very competitive. I love to win. And when it comes time for work, that's when founder mode turns on. So you have two sides of that coin.
Yeah, founder mode is something very relevant recently. And I think that vibe definitely comes off. This whole podcast started because I was talking to a friend, Joe IP, and he DM'd you, right? So for you to be...
It's right there,
that's
yeah.
right.
Yes, sir.
For you to be directly replying to your DMs, you know, when we were organizing this, talking directly straight to you, there was no, you know, assistant or anything. I think that definitely shines through.
Well, because we just hired one. We're still ramping her up, but I need one. Trust me. But yeah. Because I like to just, especially with the community, right? Like I try to answer every message I get. I try to, you know, take every like inbound. I read almost every inbound message, and and I check out the person behind it, and then if it's someone who you know, is respectable and is doing some cool things in the space, then I'm always happy to just kind of reply direct.
Bring back the years to your childhood years. There was this story that you brought up, I think, in another podcast. You mentioned that when you were 6, you were in Germany, and that was very, quote unquote, new and early for you because people would stop you for photos at 6 years old. Like, walk me through what was that like? How did it make you feel?
Dude, you're like Sean Evans, man, picking up the old, you know, I love it. So I was born in China, and I moved to Germany when I was 6 years old because my father, his dream was to work in America one day. And he got a PhD in physics, worked really hard. And I grew up very poor, so I didn't have very much, but my dad worked really hard. And he actually moved to Germany first to just scope out the scene and he didn't want to uproot the whole family without checking to see if, how's the work or the life, in Germany like, what's the quality of life like there. And so he was there for about half a year and was like, hey, it's actually pretty nice. You guys should come on over. There's not very many Asians, right? But I think it's an improvement in quality of life, and it's one step closer to this dream of working in America. So my mom and I, we moved to Germany, a small little town called Aachen. It's like Western Germany. We moved there when I was about 6.5, and I just remember going to kindergarten, and I was the only Asian kid. I didn't speak any German. And the concept of language was new to me, right? So I would go to class and I would speak to my classmates in Chinese, and I'd be like, how come they don't understand me, right? Like, this is so weird. They all look different, right? But like, I didn't really mind as a kid. I just thought it was super cool. And yeah, when I'm walking in the street, people stop me to take pictures with me, and I felt like a superstar. I'm like, this is cool, right? Getting so much attention. But it wasn't until I got older that I realized, like, oh, it's because like they've never seen like an Asian kid before, probably. Yep. And that became kind of a common theme in my life, where I'm always having to adapt. I'm always in new places, new environments, and when people ask me like, where are you from? Like, obviously, I was born in China, right? But I kind of grew up all over the place. It's kind of hard for me to answer that question, but that's just been a common theme in my life.
Yep. And I think specifically Harbin, China. So this is like really, really cool. The culturally is different from like, the main Shanghai or Beijing, right. China. In your first 18 years, I think you moved 7-8 different schools, right? So from 6 years old where you felt like you were a pop star, all the way to 18 years old where you're moving different places, friends, culture, the mixed match of everything. How was that like growing up for you?
At the time, I didn't know any different, right? It was every time I moved, it was like a year or two after, having made some friends, right, at a new school. It almost became like clockwork, like it was something to be expected. And so, when I got older and I made friends in high school, and this was in the Bay Area, and I would hear their stories about like, oh, we've been friends since we were born. We grew up in the same neighborhood, and I was like, man, that's pretty cool, right? You really developed that tight friendship over time, and I never had that. Every few years I would move, and anytime I made some friends, I think in the back of my head I was always thinking like, well, I'm gonna have to say goodbye soon, right? So I can't kind of get too close, right? And so looking back, it was very challenging, because I think growing up and always having to move and trying to fit into different cultures and facing, honestly, a lot of racism when I moved to the US, to the States, right? I was, again, one of the few Asian kids in my elementary school in New York. In Long Island, New York, notorious for being pretty racist, right? So kids can be really mean. And I didn't speak any English either. So you can imagine, only Asian kid in my elementary school, going to school, and then people saying, I didn't even know what they're saying half the time, but I still picked it up, and I think that really taught me to have thick skin, and I feel like that's a very useful skill in Web3, especially, right? Yeah. So I kind of had that training early on, but at the same time, I think it's a very I learned some very valuable life experiences throughout my childhood, and learned a lot about resilience. Learned a lot of how to just be by myself, think for myself, defend myself, and just have a very strong sense of self. And that has led into, I think, a lot of development for me. So looking back, like, do I wish sometimes that I kind of grew up in the same neighborhood and had the same group of friends? Like, sometimes I wish I did, right? I was like, that seems really nice. But my thing is, like, if you're happy right now, then you should have no regrets, because all the accumulation of everything that happened leading up to this point has made you into who you are today. And if you're happy about that, then I wouldn't change a thing. And I have some really close friends now. And some of those friends I met in high school, I actually work with now. The two of them are my co-founders, who grew up together since, I think, second grade. I have a very strong relationship with them. We've been through a lot together now, professionally and as friends. So, it's been a good journey.
The reason why I like to dive into understanding people's childhood to really set context is after interviewing so many, founders, I realized that childhood actually plays a big part in how they run their companies, right? I was speaking to Luca, and in his childhood years, I think the first 8 to 9 years, he was quote unquote homeless with his mom. They were hopping around rental bedrooms, and I was asking, what kind of impact does that have on a 12, 13-year-old kid? There was one more soundbite that I wanted to ask you about, and it sounded so like visceral, right? You mentioned that, back at home in China, you didn't have toilets even in the house. You have to go to the shared toilets outside. Like,
Oh boy. Yes, that is true.
How was it growing up like that, and how does it affect your relationship with money, with comfort?
Yeah. So on the topic of like childhood and being a founder, I feel like there's actually a very strong correlation between founders that have a very difficult and challenging upbringing,
trauma.
or childhood trauma, because they're just built different. You know what I mean? And so, and when I was growing up, it was hard for me to relate to some, friends who, didn't have to go through as many hardships, But now as I'm getting older, it's like our childhood has made us who we are. Everyone's different in that sense, right? But to answer your question, like how has that shaped my relationship with money and and all that? So yeah, when I was growing up in China, I remember no bathroom in the apartment, which is kind of crazy to think about, right? You kind of have like a little outhouse situation going on, and I think it's made me really want to make sure that I work hard to be financially responsible and sustainable for me and my family. And honestly, it's one of my goals has been to make sure that my parents and my brother are okay. And so one of the earliest things that I did after working in big tech, I worked hard and got a degree and worked at Amazon for a bit, Google. I'm very fortunate to have those years of experience. And once I saved up some money, like the first thing in my head was like, how do I repay my parents? Right? Because I would never have these experiences and the environment that I have now if it weren't for them. So they worked incredibly hard. I told you my dad's goal was to work in America one day. And that was also because he wanted to provide a better situation for his family. And my ability to get a good education, to have the experience working at these tech companies, it would never have happened without my parents. So one of the earliest things that I did when I saved up enough money was I remember when I was 6 years old in Germany, my dad told me his favorite car was a BMW.
Okay.
Right, and he brought home. So my dad's a laser engineer. He makes lasers, and back then it was for like engraving.
Yep.
And he brought home a little toy BMW. It's like a Model 3, and under it he engraved my name.
Wow.
And with the laser that he was making, and I thought that was super cool. And he said, "This is my dream car. I love BMWs, and and I made this, and I want you to have it." And I remember at 6 years old, I told him right away, I said, "I'm going to buy you a BMW one day." And in 2016, when I finally saved up enough money, I got him a Model 3, and I finally kind of made that dream come true. And that was a big moment for me because it was just a small gesture in my mind, right? Of finally, I'm able to kind of repay my dad for the hard work he put in. And then later I paid off my parents' mortgage because that was a huge like burden for them. Right. So a lot of things that I do is just to make sure my family's okay. And so I think growing up in that environment is just just made me really just want to work hard and just be able to provide.
Yep. As I was doing the research and planning the whole narrative out, it was very clear to me how you got here, but I want to take it back to the time when it happened, right? You mentioned that, you were moving around different countries, different schools, and never really had this fixed group of friends, which probably led you to, RuneScape. this whole narrative of learning about identity, learning about scarcity, rarity. You know where we're going towards. But you were saying that, you know, this blue party hat, right? Having this blue party hat where people could recognize you, this rare item, it brought a certain level of status. Like, did that change, you know, in terms of communication, socials for you when you had that phase?
Absolutely. RuneScape made a huge impact in my life among other games like Maple Story, you know, any of these MMO RPGs, because I could make friends and have a community that was digital and didn't have to be real life. And so I was always kind of quiet growing up. And I think it was rare for me to really open up because I knew, like, what's the point of me opening up if a couple years later I'm going to move anyways? I'm never going to see you again, right? Looking back, it's not the right mindset to have, but as a kid, you know, that's kind of how I thought. But in RuneScape, it's like I could move tomorrow and I could still log in and see, you know, my, you know, friends online. And what was interesting is, like, RuneScape, when I first started playing, I wasn't really into completing the quests or kind of, you know, playing the typical, you know, gameplay. I was interested in specific skills in the game, like mining or, you know, whatever. And I would love to be in the Grand Exchange and, you know, and in the marketplace, just buying and selling and just trying to, you know, like, increase my bags so I can have the sickest gear. I just thought it was so cool how you could, you know, have like rune armor, you could trim it, you know, just visually. I think that's when I, you know, recognized that I have an eye for aesthetics. I want things to look good. And RuneScape, you know, with the party hats, the blue party hat was like a rare drop from even when before I started playing. It added no stats. It was purely a visual item. And there's a set of different colors, but the blue was the most expensive. And so I just grinded for many hours. Me and my friend actually shared an account. And so he, like, trained the stats, and I would be the one that's, like, you know, making all the deals and getting our gold up. But finally, we were able to buy a blue party hat. And you put it on, and it's crazy because, like, you go in, like, a really populated area, you put it on, and then immediately people just start following you, right? I'm just walking around my blue party, I'm like, hey, what's up, guys, you know? Yeah, that's, like, the first form of digital flexing that I encountered. And of course, with NFTs, it's a very similar concept. So you see a lot of great traders in this space, and you ask them what game they played back in the day, like RuneScape comes up a lot.
And then that takes me to your collection of Pokemon cards, Yu-Gi-Oh cards. This is kind of like the mixed match of both, you know, rarity collectibles, but even starting to have your entrance into anime, into animations.
Sure.
How bad was your Pokemon card addiction, man?
And it was, so it started in elementary school.
Yep.
Yeah, and what made Pokemon so dope was that it wasn't just a card game with no lore and backstory. We were all watching the show every day. And then you go to school, and then people pull out these Pokemon cards. So that sort of...
offline to online kind of
experience. Right. That was like a like my first experience with a multimedia type IP. And then finally begged my parents to buy me a Game Boy Color. And my mom came home with the Costco pack, you know, it came with, I think, silver version. And so I would play the game, I would watch a show, I would play the trading card game, and that was it was like hitting me from all angles, right? And so that just made me want to collect, like, the best cards. And again, similar to RuneScape, I wouldn't play the actual card game. I would just be trying to trade up to get the rarest cards. And so yeah, that was my main thing is trading and collecting rare cards.
I think it's so exciting because, you know, hear about your story of resilience, being familiar with always making new friends, willing to let go of old friends and move on to the next one, because that's just what life was, right? For you, 12, 13 years old, finding your identity, your voice in RuneScape, and then all the way to cards, this, like what you said, the experience of offline and online, and I think that leads you to your Web3 journey. Before we switch from Alex to Zagabond, we need to get in the right mood for to talk about Zagabond. We need to invite Zagabond
he came
online.
prepared. All right, let's do it.
No, it's just for there we go. Okay, now we have Zagabond on. Okay, I can't see my notes with this, man.
Oh man, yeah, I started not rocking these as much.
I realized.
Yeah, that's dope.
Were you always a startup guy?
Now check your wallet, by the way. Something in there.
No. As you made that change going to crypto, and like you said, your journey in some of the largest, both institutional investing companies to some of the largest tech firms. Were you always a startup guy? Was it something that was always in your blood?
So when I was 13, I moved to the Bay Area. And I remember I was living in New Jersey at the time. And my dad had 2 job offers. One was in San Jose, in California. And then the other was in Arkansas, Little Rock, Arkansas. And he was torn because the job offer in Arkansas paid really well for the cost of living there, right? So he was like, look, we can move to Arkansas. I can get, like our dream house with however many acres. That's the American dream, right? Yep. So he asked me, would you rather move to Arkansas and have that? Or we can move to California, where I don't even know if we can afford a house, but there's more diversity there. The education is better. And he left it up to me. And I'm like, well, I remember not even taking that question too seriously. I remember thinking, wait, California, like there's cool surfer dudes there, right? That's sick. Like I want to do that. I don't go to Arkansas. What's there? And so I told him, let's go to California. And so we moved to California. And that's where I started being surrounded by a lot of families and friends whose parents worked at these big tech companies. And I started hearing more stories about, I think I was in high school when Facebook started becoming popular. And then some friends started mining Bitcoin and all these things that I would not have, focused on if I was living anywhere else. And so hearing those stories and then also having friends around me start companies, at a very young age, drop out of college, start their own startups. So I was just constantly being surrounded by that. And so I knew I wanted to kind of, go in that direction eventually. But I didn't really have any skill set that I thought was relevant at the time. I think I was still trying to find my own footing. And I was trying to gain my own confidence in my own skill set and also like trying to test things out for myself to see what I was good at. And so my first stint in my career was not in tech. I tried finance for a little bit. I did a banking internship in college. And that's where I learned I don't want to do that. And so a lot of internships is not to see what you want to do, but more so what you don't want to do. Yeah. So I'm like, no, banking's not for me. And then my first role was at a food company called General Mills. Yep. It's one of the biggest food companies in
Cheerios,
in America.
All covered by
Exactly, yeah. And so I was on the sales team. I was an account manager, so I handled some of those brands like Betty Crocker and Progresso soup and all this stuff. And for me, if I was doing my job well, my brands would be growing like 0.2% year over year, or they would tell me your job is to make sure it doesn't decrease by more than 1.5%. And so I'm like, oh, I'm actually flat this year. Everyone's like, yeah, you did a great job. And then I would look at my friends who were working in tech, and they're just like, man, we just like 10x our business last month. Like we're on track to 100x this year, and then our app is doing this and that. And so I'm like, I want to do that, right? I want to be where the growth is. And so I kind of planned out my career to move closer and closer to where the cutting edge technology was. And so that's why for my second role, it was still related to kind of what I was doing within kind of sales, but it was as a brand and vendor manager for Amazon. Amazon was a very fast growing tech company, but still had a retail side. So I did that for a little bit and then went to Google, right? It was like a lot more tech. And then 2017, that's when I was thinking like, what is my next move? Right? I feel like I have enough. I'm confident in my skill set now. I have a good network of smart people around me. I knew that if I had conviction in my own idea, I wanted to do that one day, but I didn't know what that idea was. But then a great opportunity came across, my desk, and it was one of my friends from college. She was an early employee at Coinbase, and she said, "Hey, let's catch up with my husband. He's starting this new company in the crypto space on Ethereum." And I had only heard of Ethereum and had no idea what it was. And then kind of the rest is history. And he needed someone to run operations. And I said, well, this is not my own idea, but I love the vision of a decentralized exchange, permissionless exchange. I think the world needs something like this. And I would get the experience of, being able to grow and operate a startup from zero. And so that's kind of how my ambitions led me to being a founder.
Yep. I have 3 strings of number to read to you, and let me know what you make of these figures. Yeah, 766,000, 42,000, and 25,000. Do this string of numbers mean anything?
766,000.
Yep.
And then what was the second one?
42,000 and 25,000. This is the trading volume of Azuki's Elemental and Beans. That brings us to around $1.9 billion US. Like, how does that feel that you've created something like this? Even for the first Azuki mint, it was sold out in like 3 minutes, right? How did it feel that you have created such an impact from 0 to 1.9 billion compared to those days where you're moving 0.1% at General Mills? How do you put that into perspective?
I'm going to think about that the next time I eat some Cheerios. I haven't really thought about it because in my mind, like a lot of what that number shows me, like how I feel when you tell me those numbers, is that we were at the right place at the right time to capture a lot of excitement. And I'm very grateful to have been able to attract a community of, so many wonderful builders and creatives. But it's still a very niche thing that we're doing here. And I feel like what is really the true metric that I want to go after is, can we build something valuable for the rest of the world together with this community that we have now? And so the trading volume, it shows that, like, yes, we were able to create something that people think is quality and people wanted. And so that's why there's so much trading volume. But where my mind goes to is, okay, now how can we step function into building something valuable for the rest of the world? That's kind of how I think about it. But like I think it is very to compare that with my job at General Mills, it's just night and day. It's just not even comparable, And I loved my team back at General Mills, but like a lot of them, I think are sort of perplexed by like, why would you leave a Fortune 500 company? Because they've been there for 30, 40 years. It's honestly incredible. And they have stable jobs, stable families. And so when I told them that I was moving to Amazon, actually, a lot of them were like, oh, interesting. Okay. But some of them were like, you know what? We knew this was coming. Like, we knew you didn't really belong here, like not in that way, but like we knew that you're destined to kind of do something more in tech. And so, yeah.
I think, you mentioned about part of being a founder sometimes being thick-skinned, right? In that journey in Azuki, I've got to also mention some of the lows, right? Right after that, a few months later, I think that was probably one of the lowest point for Azuki, maybe for you as well, when some of your past projects came up, right? And this concept, as I was doing the research, I was putting myself in your shoes. It's a bit of a baffling concept because back in Web 2, we're taught to move fast and break things, right? Be the first, try it. If you run A/B experiments, right? There'll always be experiments that fails, you move on. And us being trained in that, like, it will be a very, very different change as we come into Web 3 about like, oh, that was, some of this were learnings, this was experiments. And in Web 2, we celebrate the failures, the learnings, because that's what is the most definite way of going towards a path of success, right?
Yep.
As you were releasing the infamous or famous note, a builder's journey, how was it like in the room, hours before you click post?
I didn't fully know what to expect because this space, I think, now after having experienced what this space has to offer and how it responds and reacts to things, I think it can be a very unforgiving space, right? So I understand that now. But before I posted it, I thought that there would be more acceptance and understanding, truly. And I didn't expect that level of basically like get this guy out of here. We're done with him, right? And I think it was there was a pretty big contrast between people within the Azuki community who have experienced the things that the team has built. They recognize that this is something that can only be built with passion, right? And this is nothing compared to the side projects I was working on before Azuki. But from the people on the outside, I think it's driven by a lot of things, right? It could be envy. It could be just people want to support you until you're successful, then they want to see you fail. And we, like Azuki, rose up on the scene very quickly, right? So I think the faster you rise, the people are like, wait, they kind of get a little defensive, right? Like, this is, I'm not really comfortable with who is Zagabond, who is Azuki, I don't really know. And the moment something comes up, we're like, see, they're not perfect, right? And we were doing and executing so many things well. And I think no one likes a perfect person or perfect project or anything like that. And I'm no means perfect, not anywhere close. And I think being pseudonymous too, there's not a face behind the name, and people didn't know me personally, so they only saw me as this character named Zagabond. And now they want to see this character fail. And so over the past few years, I think this is why it's important. I think for me to tell my story, for people to know who I am, the good and the bad, and my successes and failures, because I want people to resonate with my journey and to hopefully take away a lot of advice and good things that can help them on their journey, but also learn from my mistakes and failures as well. That's really important to me. So, and of course, the months following that was one of the lowest points of my life, if not the lowest. But it's also made me learn an incredible amount of things and has made me, the team, and the community a whole lot stronger.
I think sometimes from the outside, it's very easy and quick to make judgments without having context, right? More so for me, because as I was preparing this, I just felt a lot of empathy, because this was someone that, was moving around places, trying to find his voice. He found it on the online community through RuneScape. Like you said, walking down in the virtual world with a blue party hat, for once you feel like seen, right? Yeah. And coming through Web 2, that was where we were taught to, just break things, move fast, right? And when the success of Azuki came, right after that, pushing you all the way down low, right? I think you mentioned even yourself, your family addresses were being announced, facing death threats. Yep. Like, I can't imagine how it would have been to be in your shoes, or how do you feel when you're alone in bed right before you sleep and just like thinking through all this?
Man, I just remember it was so tough, because I think everyone cares about what other people think of them to a certain degree, right? And I really had to learn to listen to myself and only care about validating myself. That's the only validation that I need. I think being around family and friends and a strong team at that time was just so important, because I, wouldn't have made it through without them. And, it was just daily, comments, attacks, and I just felt so voiceless, because I was being told to stay silent, because we had a PR company at the time, and they didn't really fully understand the space and the culture. And they said, oh, no one's going to remember soon. Just don't say anything and just lay low. And I'm like, are you sure about that? I feel like I should go out there and say my truth, because there's a lot of misinformation being spread. They said, no, you're good. Don't worry. And so I just stayed silent. And every day I'm like, I feel like it's getting worse. I'm just being stifled, right? And that was really hard because I'm not sure if, I'm sure everyone's been in a situation where, maybe someone blamed you for doing something that, it wasn't fully your fault, but you couldn't really stand up for yourself. That feeling, it's like your chest is being compressed, but that just fueled me to work even harder to prove to people that, no, you guys are all wrong. And if you doubt me, then I'm going to show you that through my work that this is not what you think it is, and I'm not who you think I am. But I think one thing I learned from that is and I was on Leon's podcast the other day, and he asked what advice do I have for founders? And I said, one thing is have conviction, speak your truth, and if you don't write your own history, then history will be written about you. And that's what I'm going to keep doing now. Anytime someone says something wrong, no, this is actually what happened. I think people like to conflate my previous side projects with Azuki. And to me, no, they're completely different, because Azuki is meant to be a company and a brand and IP with a long-term vision. The side projects were just experimenting with different things, but even those experiments were quality, because I put my work into everything that I do. And take Funks, for example, right? You would think that, it's a very simple project. You just flip the punk on the y-axis. And in fact, Funks weren't even the first project to do that. There were mirror punks, which was an older collection that did the same thing. There were left-facing punks that did the same thing. But how come Funks is still the community that is still around now, right? Mm-hmm. Well, because who put in the effort to really build a kind of mission for that community to rally around? Who created a minting experience that showed that, hey, this team is capable? Who created, who sent thousands of DMs to early members to attract them to that community? I did. Mm-hmm. So I am proud of my work that I did for that project and the conversations that it started around provenance and copyright. Remember, Larva Labs back then didn't give any commercial rights to the punks, and that opened up that conversation. And then for my other two projects, it did what I set out to do, right? It didn't mint out, for attendees, that's fine. Zunks minted out, did everything that I said I was going to do. And so, looking back, I think it's easy to just sort of conflate all of that and just make a blanket statement. But I'm not going to, stand down and kind of let people kind of say whatever they want now, because, I know what happened. At the end of the day, I know what I'm capable of doing. My focus now is on Azuki. We have the track record as a team to prove it, and we're on to much bigger and much greater things. And, frankly speaking, Azuki would not be what it is today if I didn't have those previous projects, because I learned so much about community building, about what it takes to run a project, and all those things really impacted our ability to kind of grow Azuki. Yep. So,
I think good founders are there when the roses are red, but true founders are there when things really get hard, right? Being there to defend and still hold firm on the direction. One thing that I'm trying to help the broader audience understand is, how would a member of the public who hasn't heard about Azuki, how would a Web2 VC, how should they rationalize Azuki? Is it a IP company? Is it an animation company? What kind of multiples do I put on Azuki? How do someone outside the space understand Azuki?
Yeah, I think it's there's not been a company quite like this. So I think it's really hard to put us under a specific category or vertical and say, they're just like an animation company, or they're an NFT project, or because I think, all of the NFT projects per se, we all started as an NFT collection. We're all going our different paths now. And it's really, kind of inspiring to see some of these projects start really gaining traction outside of Web3. Doodles are doing their thing with animation and music. Pudgies are doing their thing with toys and now with abstract chain, right? And so for us, there's three distinct pillars in the business. And I'm not a VC or investor, so it's not my job to say here's how to assign multiples to what we're doing. But there are examples of other businesses that are doing similar things on a per vertical basis. The first one we're building is called Azuki Entertainment. And that is, think of it as a more traditional IP entertainment studio. We have our own first party IP being Azuki, right? We have the community. We're doing content, short form content, long form content. And the goal is to really grow this IP and be able to monetize it. We'll have licensing, merchandising, and all that. And we're starting to see some good traction in Web 2. People see the Azuki IP and they want more of it, right? So that's the goal of this vertical. The second one, which we just announced, is anime.com. Mm-hmm. And this is more of a traditional platform that is run on crypto rails. And that's meant for more mainstream adoption. You don't have to have a wallet. You don't have to have crypto. But you can still go to anime.com, and that's how we can onboard people into our ecosystem. And lastly, of course, is more on the Web3 side, is being a launch partner for Anime Chain and Anime Coin, which powers this whole ecosystem.
I was excited to talk about that. In fact, a flurry of news, right? I think maybe a couple of months ago, you guys announced Steve, who came on board as the new CEO, someone who has come from CJ Group, Crash Landing into You, Parasite. These are global names that you hear out before. And just, I think, like 4 or 5 days ago, you announced anime.com. This morning, I checked on GoDaddy. That domain costs like $14 million. So this is a very, very big move.
14 million? Is that what it said?
I saw on GoDaddy. Yeah.
It's listed for 14 million?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I don't know how they're... So here's the thing with the GoDaddy thing. So when I first saw the domain, it was on GoDaddy for 10 million. And I was like, very expensive. Don't get me wrong. But the right domain in the right hands, anime.com, right? I feel like no one's done anything with that domain for quite some time, and I felt that we could be good stewards of this domain and kind of really enhance the anime industry with it. And then so we gave out an offer. It's nowhere near 10 million, and I thought it was a very fair offer for both sides, and then it was accepted. But then after we obtained the domain, obviously it's ours now, right? We just announced it, but I don't know how it works on the GoDaddy side, but maybe they're still able to control the listing somehow. But no, that's not us, and I assure you, it's not for sale.
I know, but I wanted to signal like the appointment of Steve, going for such a key domain. You could have went just with like Azuki, .anime or like a subdomain, right? This signals like a lot of confidence and a lot of big plans coming out, I would say, in the next 12, 18 months, right?
Yes.
What can people look forward to in terms of this new direction? And the reason I ask that is because some companies maybe make a public product announcement, but that's all. But you're, kind of doing it from within, even like a key appointment holder within the company, right? So can you share with us like what's coming up in the next 12 to 18 months?
Yes, and I'll kind of go back to the Steve Chung announcement. Steve is of course our COO, and he's our inaugural COO. And our intention with bringing on someone as experienced in the entertainment industry like Steve is when I met Steve, he was very curious about what our vision was within the anime industry. And when I shared about the IP and the community that we're building is just the first step, right? The first 2 years of Azuki has been building this brand and curating an awesome community. But I think our calling is something much greater than that. I think our calling is to give this world this open anime universe, and it's going to do a lot of great things for creatives, for fans. They might not know it yet, but this is what we want to build. And we started having a lot of conversations, and he was very inspired by that because he spent the past few years at CJ as the CEO of CJ's US division. And he's seen the rise of Korean entertainment. So they just put K in front of every K-drama, right? K-pop, K-everything. And they've been so good at exporting Korean culture. And is very intentional. It's something that Korea does a great job of, and CJ has been a huge proponent of that. And it takes a lot of intentionality and work to bring international content to Hollywood and showcase why it's something that this market would enjoy. And of course, now Korean content is one of the biggest categories and still one of the fastest categories of entertainment in the world. So that's one category that's fast growing. The second one is anime, right? And so when we talked more and more about our ambitions, we realized that there's an opportunity to do what Korea has done for Korean entertainment. There's an opportunity to do the same for anime, and it's not that we need to come in and do something that is not happening already. We just want to enhance it and make it an even more seamless process, because anime has become a lifestyle, right? It's much more than just a genre. It's everywhere. If you go to Japan, it's really integrated into everyday life. You see IPs everywhere, and people doing cosplay, everything. And so, I think seeing this opportunity to now bring anime culture more mainstream in the West is something that we're very excited about, and anime.com will play a big piece of that. You're starting to see anime being mentioned now by celebrities, by athletes, and this is something no one really talked about before because it was kind of taboo. It's like, oh, you watch like Japanese cartoons, that's kind of weird, right? Or I don't want to talk about that. But now it's starting to become pretty cool. Yep. Yeah, and it can be enjoyed by people of all ages. And I think there's really lacking a sort of business interface for anime for the entertainment industry in North America. And I think there's a big opportunity for anime.com to become that player. And of course, in order to get there, we need the Azuki community to be the people who are, really helping evangelize, helping solve the cold start problem on any new platform. And so everything is synergistic, right? And so the broader vision is, I've talked about Anime 2.0 a lot, yep. Right? And to put it simply, Anime 2.0 is about democratizing the anime industry. It's about putting more ownership and giving more upside to the fans and creators that help shape this industry, that help shape this culture. Because anime fans are some of the most passionate fans out of just anything, right? Like just go to a conference and you'll see what I mean. So that's the broader vision of Anime 2.0. How can we uplift the entire industry and kind of help move it forward?
I definitely have my anime phase. Starting to get a bit geeky, but back in the days, I was a huge fan of Liar Game and Death Note. I would even hold my phone like this if you watch Death Note. When L sits on the chair, he puts his legs up. I had my phase, right? Yeah. If I'm an anime fan, what can I expect, right? In your vision, in Azuki's vision of what anime would look like, just from a pure mass market fan perspective.
Yeah, so so what you can do with anime.com right now is you can sign up for the wait list, right? And all that is actually done on crypto rails. It's done on Anime Chain, and you're able to see the main mascots for anime.com. But we're going to roll out the features and start showing the community what this product is piece by piece. We're going to sequence it out. So I can't tell you exactly what it's going to be quite yet, but what I will say is that currently the anime fan experience is quite fragmented, right? Because we watch anime on Crunchyroll, Netflix, we discuss it on Reddit, leave a review on my anime list, we go to another site to buy merch, and there isn't quite a platform that can serve all of this fandom in one place. And a lot of these anime sites are they just look very outdated, right? And so I think to put a more modern UX to it, and to give people the chance to connect with other anime fans who are fans of a certain IP. That's something that we want to do for anime fans.
In my previous interview with Luca, I asked him, hey, what's one statement that the community can hold him accountable to in the next 1 year, so that maybe if I meet him again in 2025, people can say, hey, you've said this, you've done that. For him, it was abstract chain, right? Being the main top consumer chain. What is that one-line statement for Zagabond, for Azuki?
We will stay authentic to anime as an art form, as a culture, and create something valuable for anime fans at the end of the day. That's something that is very important to us. It's something that with a great domain like anime.com comes great responsibility. And so we don't take that lightly. So you can hold me accountable for that.
I like to end the show by bringing the conversation back to Alex, right? The person in the seat. If you wind back the years, back to the early days of Alex, specifically, the time when your dad was asking if you want to move to California, you've been moving around so much, having to find a new place to go. I'm sure you face a lot of like doubts, uncertainties. Going through what you face now, and you could tell Alex back then, what would you say to him?
What did I tell little Alex back then? I would tell him to don't forget your RuneScape password. Got some blue party hats. But in all seriousness, I would tell him to just find your interests and have and build your confidence as soon as possible. And I think that's really important because going back in when I was younger, I think just having a mentor earlier on would have helped me kind of find my stride even sooner. But like I said, no regrets, right? Honestly, like if I actually saw myself back then, I'd be like, dude, just keep doing what you're doing, keep trading your Pokemon cards, keep playing RuneScape, like you'll be fine, But yeah.
No, I really appreciate it. I mean, it's a 1 hour series, but I feel like I've known so much about you. And one thing I've realized is a lot of our childhood and our experiences really shape who we are today, right? In the conversation with Luca, all his past experience brought him to how he's taking Pudgies. I think with your experience with, identity, RuneScape, Pokemon cards, it also shows how, and of course, you're a huge anime fan, right? It shows how you shape the project and direction of Azuki. So I think it's like really, really exciting for me to kind of go behind the scenes to understand the person in the seat, Alex. And I think one thing that caught my eye, you said that now I don't put on the shades anymore, right? I think there's also this realization of yourself from putting yourself in the spotlight, from being behind the scenes to maybe at the start in my take, maybe as a front, like wear shades, but now just come out clean. I feel like that whole journey, that growth was like public on Twitter. And, I really appreciate, you taking time off, speaking with me, even the lead up to this. Definitely when you said someone would describe you as someone who's down to earth, I can 100% attest to that. So I appreciate it. Thanks for coming on, Z.
Thank you so much, man. This is really fun.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.